Ever imagine yourself braving the wilderness, like really roughing it, Survivor Man style, but, maybe without the actual life or death stakes?
Right.
Well, get this. There's a new VR experience that drops you right into the heart of the Arctic Circle, all from the safety of your VR headset.
Yeah. Survivor Man VR, The Descent. And
Mm.
we're diving deep into how they brought this whole thing to life, how they actually made it.
And to help us with that, you found us some really cool material for this deep dive.
Yeah, we've got this awesome interview with Les Stroud himself. We're going to talk about the real deal, right?
Real Survivor Man.
And and the game's creator, Andrew McDonald, he's from a company called Cream Productions. So we've got wilderness expertise meeting like cutting edge VR technology.
That's like peanut butter and chocolate, kind of, right?
It's a combo you wouldn't expect.
You wouldn't expect it, but it just works.
It does, it does.
And for our listeners who, can't wait to test their survival skills, I mean, they're ready to go right now.
I like their style,
The game is available right now on the MetaQuest store.
which, I mean, let's be honest, that's the place to go for VR.
It's the place to be. Yeah.
And it's also going to be released on the Sony PSVR in February 2024 as well.
Okay, so mark your calendars for that one. But one of the things that really struck me going through this material was how much Stroud and McDonald really hammered this point home about this being more than just a game. Like, they keep calling it a survival simulator.
Yeah, they use that word a lot.
They do.
And I think it's really interesting. They really wanted to get away from this idea of, just entertainment, just, racking up points or something, and really focus on creating something that felt truly authentic to like the real experience.
Oh, yeah. Stroud really, he was really pretty adamant about that simulator label.
Oh, yeah. He did not want this to be mistaken for, like a walk in the virtual park.
Hmm.
This is serious stuff. This is about like testing your decision-making skills when you're in like a really harsh environment or really unforgiving environment.
Hmm.
Like, think about it. What would you actually do if you found yourself stranded in the Arctic?
Okay, honestly, probably panic.
Yeah.
A lot of yelling for help at the virtual sky. Wood! Anyone, I'm in VR.
Yeah, exactly. But see, that's what this game is trying to get you to think about, right? Like, it's not just about reflexes. It's about using your head. It's
Mhm.
about thinking strategically when you're in a really, really tough situation.
Yeah. And Stroud, I mean, the guy's got decades of real life experience, right? He made sure the game, actually reflected that.
Oh, yeah, he was all over it. He acted
Yeah.
as like a strict consultant throughout the whole development process, just making sure that every little detail, every survival technique, everything was accurate.
There's that story he tells about the Arctic hares.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So,
So the game developers initially they had this really simple snare that was just kind of set up out in the open.
hmm
And I mean, that makes sense, right? On the surface it sounds pretty logical.
you think, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then Stroud's like, no, no, no. You're not thinking about this like a real survivalist.
Right. It's about understanding the nuances of the environment. Like, how do animals in the Arctic actually behave? You have to adapt to that.
Exactly. You're not just setting a trap anywhere. You need a rock wall. You need a funnel to guide them toward it. It's all about the details.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between like, surviving another day or becoming like a virtual cautionary tale.
And speaking of realism, can we just take a moment to appreciate how they captured Stroud's likeness in this game?
It's uncanny. I
The
mean,
guy's face, it's practically synonymous with wilderness survival, you know?
it's true. It's true. But it's even crazier.
What?
They actually spent 4 years developing this patented technology just to create a realistic digital avatar of him.
4 years,
Yeah.
seriously.
4 years. That's how detailed they got with it. They weren't messing around. They weren't going for like, a cartoon or a caricature. They wanted people to feel like they were actually right there interacting with Les Stroud himself.
And I've heard, I mean, from what I've heard, they absolutely nailed it. People are saying it's like he's right there with you, teaching you how to survive.
It's incredible what they can do with VR these days. It
Yeah.
really makes you wonder, like, what are the limits of this technology? I mean, if they can recreate Les Stroud with that level of detail,
Right.
imagine the possibilities.
Okay, now you're getting me really excited about the future of VR.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here because we still have a ton to unpack with Survivor Man VR, right?
Oh, for sure.
The technology, okay, it's amazing. But what about the gameplay itself?
Well, from what Stroud and McDonald described,
Yeah.
it's a really careful balance, right? You're learning these essential survival skills,
Yeah.
but they've also, they've incorporated these like fun elements to keep things engaging.
Fun element. Okay, I gotta ask, What does fun look like in a survival simulator? Am I like building a snow fort while outrunning a polar bear?
Well, Stroud did mention something about them hiding these little Easter eggs in the game.
Easter eggs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, little surprises and things for players to discover as they're, trying to make it out of the wilderness.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
He was kind of being all mysterious about the specifics, but he did hint that some of them involve musical instruments, which I thought was interesting.
Okay, knowing Stroud, there's got to be a harmonica hidden in there somewhere, probably like tucked inside a hollowed out log or something.
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of awesome. But Easter eggs aside, let's talk about the actual survival stuff. Like, what does surviving in this VR world actually entail?
So from what they were saying, it sounds like they really tried to create a truly multisensory experience. Like they went above and beyond to really recreate the look and the feel of the Arctic.
Wow.
Like even down to like the sound of the snow crunching under your feet as you're walking around.
Really?
Yeah, Stroud actually talked about how like the sound of snow changes depending on the temperature.
Huh.
He made sure they captured that in the game.
I never would have even thought about that. The sound of snow.
It's those little details, but it
Yeah.
makes sense, right? Because it just sucks you in. It makes it that much more real. Like, imagine you're standing on this windswept glacier, right? The sun's barely up,
Yeah.
and you've got the crunch of the snow under your feet. The wind is howling. It's all designed to really put you in that place, in
Right.
that harsh environment.
And I bet that makes the challenges like feel that much more real, you know? Like
Hmm.
forgetting to find shelter before that virtual blizzard hits. That's going to be intense.
Oh, absolutely. And, it made me think there's this really interesting tension in developing something like this, right? Because on the one hand, you want to make it exciting and visually compelling for the player,
Sure.
but on the other hand, you also have to stay true to what would actually happen in a real survival situation.
Yeah.
So they really focused on skills that would actually translate. And that's obvious when you see the stuff they have you doing in the game.
Okay, like what?
Like everything from like starting a fire to building your own snowshoes. They really went all out.
Okay, those are definitely two skills I would want on my side if I was ever in a survival situation. Did they at least make the fire starting part a little bit easier in VR?
Well, Stroud made a point of saying, like, lighting a fire in, damp, cold conditions is tough. It's not like the movies. You just strike a match, toss it on a pile of logs, and boom, you got a roaring fire.
Yeah, I was going to say, it never really works out that way, does it?
Not in real life. He said you have to find the right tinder. You got to build a structure that allows for airflow. You got to carefully nurture that flame until it catches. It's a process.
Sounds like I'd be the one freezing to death trying to rub two virtual sticks together.
Well, that's the thing. It makes you slow down and think things through. It forces you to, like, really apply these skills methodically. And another thing, they didn't just throw in, like, every survival technique under the sun.
Yeah, right.
They really focused on what would be most relevant to the Arctic environment. It's not just about knowing how to survive in any wilderness.
It's about knowing how to survive in a very specific, very unforgiving, very cold, and likely to freeze your butt off very quickly landscape. That's a niche market right there.
It is. Yeah. And I think that's what makes it so interesting, because it's not just a generic survival experience. It's this deep dive into like a very specific set of challenges, which I think just makes it all the more immersive for the player.
And it leaves them open to explore other environments and other survival techniques in future episodes, right? Like Stroud mentioned deserts and mountains.
Exactly. I mean, the possibilities are kind of endless when you think about it.
I mean, imagine it. Survivor Man, VR Sahara, you're battling like crazy dehydration, learning how to like find water in the desert.
Yeah.
Or Survivor Man VR Andes, you're dealing with altitude sickness and having to navigate like crazy mountain passes.
Right.
That'd be wild.
And think about it, it's more than just the physical stuff, right? You're also getting a taste of like the mental toughness that it takes to actually survive in these situations.
Yeah, and that's where Stroud's zones of assessment framework comes in.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like he gives you this mental toolkit for making decisions under pressure.
It's true because, I mean, it's easy to panic in those situations.
Totally.
But Stroud really emphasized staying calm. Easier said than done, right? Especially when you've got a virtual grizzly bear charging at you.
Right.
But, like he said, if you panic, it just clouds your judgment. It's harder to think clearly. So instead of freaking out, you use these zones to kind of take stock of the situation.
Okay, so how does that work? Like, walk me through it.
So you start with the first zone, which is
Yeah.
all about your immediate needs. So are you injured? Do you have food and water? It's about addressing those things first.
Okay, yeah, get the essentials sorted out. But what about shelter? That seems pretty important too.
Absolutely, and that's where the second zone comes in, nearby resources.
Okay.
So you got to look around and say, okay, what's available to me right now? Can I build a fire? Is there a cave or some kind of natural shelter I can use?
Right, because even in VR, I don't want to be caught out in the open when that blizzard hits.
Exactly. But okay, so let's say you've taken care of your immediate needs. You've figured out your surroundings. What's next?
Yeah, what then?
That's when you move to the third zone, exploring options further afield. So you start thinking about things like, where's the nearest water source? Are there any signs of civilization? What's the lay of the land tell me about potential dangers or opportunities?
So it's like you're zooming out, getting the bigger picture, trying to form some kind of long-term plan for survival.
Exactly, exactly. And this might sound crazy, but this framework, it's not just for survival situations. Think about how you could use it in everyday life.
Really?
Yeah, imagine you're facing like a tight deadline at work or something, right?
Yeah.
Instead of panicking, take a moment to assess, okay, what are my immediate needs? What resources do I have? What are my options for tackling this?
Huh, I never thought about it that way. That's pretty useful.
Like a mental model for dealing with pressure.
My to-do list suddenly feels a lot less daunting.
I know, right? But that's the beauty of what Stroud and McDonald have done here. It's entertaining, but it also gives you these tools and knowledge that you can actually use in real life.
It makes you wonder what other deep dives we could take in VR, right?
Oh, I know.
The possibilities are kind of endless.
Endless. But for now, I think it's safe to say we learned a lot from our virtual trip to the Arctic.
We did. And maybe we helped our listeners pick up some new skills and knowledge along the way as well. We'll leave you with this. If you could master any skill in virtual reality, what would it be and why? Let us know. Maybe we'll do a deep dive on it on a future episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe out there in both the real and virtual worlds.